Welcome back to the Den of Nerds. I am Josh, and we just got trailer number 2 for James Gunn's Superman. And in this video, I wanted to just give you my thoughts on the trailer, break down some stuff that I liked about it, some stuff that I didn't like about it, some things I think the movie's going to do very well, and then some things that I'm still kind of concerned with. And I'll be honest with you, I did record a reaction to the trailer, but it was a terrible reaction. Here's a little bit of it right here.
Are you being serious right now?
Yeah.
You'd let me interview you as Superman.
Sure.
Ready?
Let's do it, Cronkite.
Superman.
Miss Lane.
I was processing a lot. I was like thinking about a lot as I was watching the trailer. But after I watched it a couple more times, I think I can surmise and articulate my points a little bit better. First thing I want to say, I think it's a good trailer, okay? So I want to make that abundantly clear. I think it's a good trailer, mostly because it begins with this dialogue sequence between Lois Lane and Superman, and it's an interview. It's an interview that sort of tries to go hard-nosed against Clark and Superman in some of his more recent actions, and it plays as tension starts to build with the music, and you start to see how Clark's world just feels so stressful. He literally just wants to help, and he views him going to intervene and stop that war as him not representing anything or anybody, and he just wants to help people out. But that is obviously not how the world works. He is a representative of America. He's a representative of the West. He represents a lot as Superman, and so his actions need to be taken into more consideration. And I like how the tension builds in the trailer with these awesome and epic set pieces, like the actual footage of the towers or those skyscrapers breaking down, the footage of the war in the Middle East, the action with Clark flying around and doing stuff. It looks incredible in this trailer, and it looks so much better than it did in the first trailer. I think that they've done a lot of work to try to tighten this up and make it look really crispy. You also do get a sense for Lex Luthor. We get Lex Luthor's dialogue for the first time. He has a problem with Superman, doesn't even view him as a person, views him as a thing, and he's so frustrated that the world is hyper fixated on him, and he wants to destroy that whole thing. And I do love how the theme plays heavily. There's a lot of crypto. They know that's working, and people love crypto. And as the theme kicks in towards the end of the trailer, and you see Superman actually with his loved ones, with his mom, with his dad, with Lois Lane, with all of his friends, you really do feel and empathize with Clark Kent, the character. So I think this is a very effective trailer. I mean, it's selling you on spectacle, and damn, it does look cool. Like, you got to give credit where credit is due, man. This whole guy that's blasting, which I think that's the clone, right? I think that's Ultraman in the suit at the beginning of the trailer. That looks absolutely incredible. Even him fighting that big goofy monster looks better. I mean, I feel it looks silly as hell in the first trailer. It looks better here. The flying looks better. The costume looks better. Green Lantern pops off a little bit with his powers. It looks dope as hell. Engineer actually uses her powers. She looks really cool. So there's a lot of like really good stuff in here. Like, you have to admit, this looks really fun, and I think that's great for the film. It's going to get a lot of people into the theaters. And I think tonally this feels right, and I think that's going to be enough for most people. Now, I got to be honest, I have some issues with the trailer. And I think this mostly just comes down to I'm not a massive fan of James Gunn's sensibility. He tends to go really snarky and, humorous with his stuff. So even Clark, like, calling her Cronkite at the beginning, not super happy about that. The fact that he was laughing stuff off. The fact that she asks him about the president, and he gives this big sigh like he's a fucking 12-year-old being asked to go do the chores. Yeah, I'm not a fan. There's a lot of stuff in this trailer that just feels a little too James Gunn for me. Even Luthor and the way he's like going on, he sounds a little bit more like a parody of a comic book villain rather than some like very serious, like dark figure, like this force that's going to intimidate you. He really just seems whiny. But I think that's all just James Gunn's style. Like, that's just kind of how he does these things. I think in a lot of ways Gunn sees himself as Superman, or he kind of like writes Superman from his own perspective. And so he kind of thinks of Superman as just like a normal dude, and maybe even having a sense of humor about things, and not necessarily being this stoic that has been, I think depicted with Clark in the past. And that's a fair interpretation. There's nothing against that. Like, there's nothing wrong with necessarily doing that. But I just also have to be honest, when Gunn was announced as the director and writer of this film, I kind of thought it was a mistake, because although I like James and his Guardians of the Galaxy movies, a lot of his stuff I don't like, and I thought was too infantile. And I was like, I just don't know that this is the guy for Superman. I think Superman needs to be a little bit more stoic, a little bit more serious. Like, frankly, the way I would have played that first scene was like Superman being really well read and then addressing Lois's questions with like some high fucking philosophy. Like he's thought about this. This isn't like some dude just flying by the seat of his pants, literally. But that's a nerdy thing, you know, that's a personal choice. Overall, like I would say this is an acceptable version of Superman, even for somebody like me that doesn't love all the little things that Gunn adds to his different movies. And beyond even that, I think the DCU has a bright future because I'm really excited for the Lanterns project and I'm really excited for Supergirl. And I'm actually more excited for those, frankly, because I'm just, again, not the biggest James Gunn fan. I just don't like his sensibilities. But Supergirl is more irreverent than Clark. Like, she should be wild, and she should be this, like, warrior, absolute pistol that's going around swearing, you know, having fun and fighting bad guys like Lobo. That seems perfect. I almost feel like Gunn would have been a better fit for that film. And then Lantern seems like it's going to be this very serious, you know, cowboy, Midwest kind of a story, like a murder mystery, true detective vibe. And that feels right, and I'm excited to see those characters there. So at the end of the day, man, it's possible that this movie comes out and it's just not like my favorite Superman vibe, but at the end of the day, it's a cool version of Superman that's existing in a new world that feels right and connected. Because I will say this about Gunn. He is a massive comic book fan, and he loves these characters, and he understands what makes these characters so cool. And he's setting up so much in Superman, like Lanterns, Maxwell Lord, having the engineer, Rick Flag, the government, like this big monster, Metallo. Like, dude, there's a crazy stuff. Ultraman, cloning Lex Luthor. Like, he's absolutely going for it with DC. And that has me quite excited. Like, there's a lot of elements here that he seems to be handling fairly well. And as a big DC fan, I'm like, let's go. I wish Clark was just a little bit more serious, like just a little bit. Also, to be fair to Gunn and this iteration of Superman, you know, people had problems with Henry Cavill Superman. People have always had issues with different versions of Superman. And, you know, a lot of the defense that people would say about Snyder and stuff was like, you got to let him cook. Like, you got to let him develop. And where the character begins in Man of Steel was like not where he was going to end up. And maybe that's the true of this Superman. I mean, he feels a little more formed than Clark was in Man of Steel, obviously, right? He's got the suit, he's Superman, he's been active and whatnot. But, you know, it could still be fair to say that this is not the final form of this Superman, and that even throughout the course of this film, we might see Superman become a little bit more stoic, become a little bit more put together, and maybe a little less like silly and goofy. I don't know, maybe I'm just fanboy dreaming, but I thought about this where I was like, you know what, let's be fair. It is possible that this character is changing. And also too, like, it could just work. Like, people could like it, you know, people could like it and they could be like, you know what? Yeah, David's Superman is a little more snarky and, you know, a little more silly and a little less like stoic, but we like that and it feels right for the time. And I will say, as long as he drops some like really good wisdom jewels and he's like at least put together and doing the right thing, like maybe that's enough. And I will also add, it looks incredible. The action looks great. And I think that's really going to be something that people go to the theaters to check out. Like, seeing Superman be absolutely incredible and fly around, like, it's one of those things where there's not a lot of other superheroes that can do this. And so it's interesting because you could even see in the Thunderbolts, they had Sentry, and there was one scene in particular where Sentry's doing Sentry shit, and he was like on that Superman level. But it's like a minute, maybe less. And it's awesome, but it kind of leaves you wanting more. And then you realize, like, oh, well, they'd almost have to dedicate the whole budget to just doing that. And Superman looks to be a pretty expensive movie. And yeah, that Superman and Kryptonian on Kryptonian action looks dope as hell. So I guess overall for me, I think this is an effective trailer. I'm excited for the movie. It does sting just a little bit because I'm like, oh man, like this one element that I was hoping Gunn wouldn't do, he did. I guess that's to be expected. And again, I got to see the whole movie. But that's just like my totally fair, totally honest take on this thing. It's like, I don't like that element, but there's a lot of stuff here that's operating really well. And I'm genuinely excited for this movie and excited for the future of the DCU. Let me know what you thought about this trailer. I'm super curious as to what you guys think about it. I'm taking a couple of days off streaming, so I'll be back streaming on Friday morning, and we can, of course, talk about the Superman trailer then. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section, like, right here, man. I'd love to know what you thought about Superman overall. As I always say, I hope you are having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.